Who am I? It's a question that strikes at our very core. Who am I really? You think you know, but do you? David, the second monarch of Israel, thought that he knew who he really was. But after his sin with another man's wife, he was confronted with the reality that he didn't know himself at all. Listen to what 2 Samuel 12, 1-7 says. And the Lord sent Nathan unto David, and he came unto him, and said unto him, There were 2 men in one city, the one rich and the other poor. The rich man had exceeding many flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing, save one little ewe lamb, which he had bought and nourished up. And it grew up together with him, and with his children. It did eat of his meat, and drank of his own cup, and lay in his bosom, and was unto him as a daughter. And there came a traveler unto the rich man, and he spared to take of his own flock, and of his own herd, to dress for the wayfaring man that was to come, but took the poor man's lamb, and dressed it for the man that was to come to him. And David's anger was greatly kindled against the man. And he said to Nathan, As the Lord liveth, the man that hath done this thing shall surely die. And he shall restore the lamb fourfold, because he did this thing, and because he had no pity. And Nathan said to David, Thou art the man. That's down through verse number 7. You know, sin has a way of teaching us things about ourselves that we'd rather never learn. Then I think of those self-righteous Pharisees. You know, they thought that they knew themselves. But when Jesus compared the Pharisee to the publican, it was made known that the Pharisee had the wrong impression of himself. Listen to what the text says. 2 men went up to the temple to pray. The one a Pharisee, the other a publican. And the Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, God, I thank thee that I'm not as other men are, extortioners and unjust and adulterers, or even as this publican. I fast twice in the week. I give tithes of all that I possess. And the publican, standing afar off, would not lift up so much as his eyes even unto heaven, but smote his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For every one that exalteth himself shall be abased, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. That's Luke 18, 10-14. You know, haughtiness compared to the humility of another has a way of teaching us who we really are. Who can forget the prodigal son? He was so ready to head out on his own. He thought that he had life figured out, and he set out to fulfill a self-gratifying lifestyle. Well, what happened? The Bible says, and not many days after the younger son gathered all together and took his journey into a far country, and there he wasted his substance with riotous living. And when he had spent all there, he arose, and a mighty famine came in the land, and he began to be in want. And he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country. And he sent him into his fields to feed the swine. And he would fain have filled his belly with the husk that the swine did eat. And no man gave unto him. And when he came to himself, he said, How many hired servants of my father's have bread enough and to spare? And I perish with hunger. I will arise. I'll go to my father, and I will say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of thy hired servants. And he arose and he came to his father, the Bible says in Luke 15, 13-20. When our way of living seems to come crashing down and leaves us wondering, what's next? It has a way of showing us who we really are. So who are you, really? Paul tells us to examine ourselves, 2 Corinthians 13:5. Before you're tempted with sin, know yourself. When challenged by pride, know who you should be. Prior to life crumbling down beneath your feet, know who you are. Pray for wisdom in dealing with the difficulties of life. You know, we have a lot of extra time on our hands. How are you using that time? Perhaps you can use some of it to examine yourself, to see who you really are. May God bless you. Have a wonderful day.